Have you ever set a big goal in secret? You told yourself you would work in silence, and one day you would surprise everyone with your success. But after a few days, your energy faded and you quietly stopped. We are taught that discipline must be lonely, that asking for help is weakness. But what if being alone is the real reason you keep failing? If you're tired of starting strong and ending in silence, this story will change how you see everything. Stay with me until the end. Before the sun rose, while the village still slept, Jace walked toward the forest with a heavy stone resting on his shoulder. The air was cold, and each step pressed the weight deeper into his skin, but he kept moving along the empty path. Thassaras. He came here every morning, always early and always alone, because he believed that real strength must be built where no one could see him. No eyes to judge him, no witnesses to his mistakes. One day he would return stronger, and everyone would wonder how he changed. That was his plan. As he stepped into the forest, the world grew quiet, and the light became thin between the tall trees. He lowered the stone, rolled his shoulders once, then bent down and lifted it again, feeling the rough surface press into his hands. At first, he felt in control. His breathing was steady, his movements strong. But slowly, the weight began to change, and the stone felt heavier than before. His arms started to shake, his grip weakened, the pressure built in his shoulders as his breath grew faster. Then a soft voice rose in his mind. "You're tired. You can stop." Jace froze, holding the stone against his shoulder as his chest moved quickly. His eyes moved through the trees, searching without thinking. No one could see him struggle, and no one would see him stop. The silence answered him. So his hands loosened, and the stone fell to the ground with a dull, heavy sound that quickly disappeared into the still air. Jace stood there, breathing hard, then wiped his face and gave a small nod to himself. "I'll try again tomorrow." It sounded reasonable. It felt safe. But something invisible had already begun to grow. Because in silence, quitting does not feel like failure. It feels like rest. Have you ever stopped, not because you had to, but because no one would know if you did? Jace bent down and picked up the stone again, but this time, the weight felt different in his hands. Not just heavier, but more familiar. And the forest remained quiet around him. Too quiet. The next morning, Jace returned to the forest before the light could reach the ground. The air felt colder than before, and the path under his feet seemed longer, even though it had not changed. He bent down, gripped the stone, and lifted it onto his shoulder with a sharp breath. His body remembered the pain, but his pride spoke louder. He walked deeper into the forest, farther than yesterday, as if distance could protect him, as if being unseen could make him stronger. His steps were steady at first, but there was tension in them now. something tighter, something less certain. Jace reached the clearing and dropped the stone in front of him. He did not pause. He did not prepare. He simply bent down and lifted it again, faster this time, almost impatient, as if he wanted to prove something quickly. Lift, step, breathe, lift, step, breathe, but the rhythm did not hold. His arms began to shake earlier than before, and his breath grew heavy sooner than it should. The weight settled into his shoulders like it had been waiting for him, like it knew exactly when to press harder. Jace tried to push through it, but the voice returned, softer now, almost friendly. You did enough. This time, he did not argue. He took one more step, then stopped. The stone shifted in his grip and his body leaned forward, already preparing to escape the weight. His eyes moved across the empty forest, slower now, not searching, just confirming what he already knew. No one was there, so he let go. The stone hit the ground, and Jace stepped back immediately, as if the decision had already been made before the moment arrived. He placed his hands on his knees, breathing hard, but his face did not show frustration. It showed relief. He stood up, looked at the stone for a second, then turned away without hesitation. No second attempt. No internal fight. Just a quiet agreement. Jace looked strong, but his secret made him weak. When the weight became painful, he stopped, and because no one was watching, stopping had no cost. That was the shift. Not in his body, in his standard. Day after day, the pattern repeated, but something inside him was changing in a direction he did not see. Each time he returned to the forest, he stopped sooner. Each time the voice spoke, it needed less effort to be believed, and each time he let go, it felt more natural. One morning, Jace lifted the stone, but his hands were already tired before the work began. His arms trembled almost immediately, and his breath lost its rhythm after only a few steps. He stopped. Not because he had reached his limit, but because he expected to. For a moment he stood there with the stone still on his shoulder, caught between effort and escape. His fingers tightened slightly, then loosened again. There was no battle left. He lowered the stone slowly, almost gently, and stepped away from it without looking back. And in that quiet decision, something dangerous became complete. He was no longer fighting the voice. He was following it. On the next morning, Jace lifted the stone again, but something felt different before he even began. His arms were already tired, and his breath came heavier, as if his body remembered a result that had not happened yet. He stood still for a moment, holding the weight, then slowly lowered it to the ground. Not because he had to, because he expected to. Jace looked at the stone, then turned away and walked out of the forest without finishing his training. The trees thinned as he moved forward, and the air grew warmer with each step, as if the world outside was breathing again. Then he heard something. Voices. Not loud, not chaotic, but steady and moving together. He followed the sound until the path opened to a wide river cutting through the land, and there along its edge he saw them, men and women working side by side, lifting massive stones. They were building a bridge. Jace slowed his steps, his eyes fixed on the scene as if he had walked into something he was not meant to see. The people were not warriors. Their bodies were not perfect. Their movements were not sharp, but they kept moving. A group bent down together, lifting a large stone slab from the ground. Their arms strained, their backs tightened, and their breathing became loud and uneven. The stone was heavy, that was clear, but no one let go. One man slipped slightly, his foot losing balance on the dirt, and the stone tilted for a moment. Jace's body reacted instantly, expecting the fall, expecting the failure. This should have failed, but it didn't. The others adjusted their grip without panic. One stepped closer, another slowed down. The weight shifted, but it stayed in the air. "Hold," one of them said quietly, and they continued. Jace took a step closer, then another, drawn in by something he could not explain. Another group lifted a stone even larger than the first, their faces tight with effort, their arms shaking just like his always did in the forest. But they did not stop. Why? Jace's chest tightened slightly as he watched. His hands moved unconsciously, as if remembering the feeling of the stone pressing into them. He stepped closer to the edge of the work, close enough now to hear their breathing, to feel the rhythm of their movement. Then he saw something that made him pause. At the back of one group, a young boy struggled under the weight. His arms trembled violently, and his steps became uneven. For a moment, it looked like he would let go. Jace knew that moment. He had lived inside it. But then, the man beside the boy shifted his shoulder under the stone, taking a little more weight. Another worker slowed his pace, matching the boy's steps without saying a word. No one told him to be stronger. They simply made it harder for him to quit. Jace's breathing slowed as he watched, his eyes fixed on the quiet exchange that no one announced. No one praised. The stone was still heavy. The effort was still real, but something had changed. The weight was shared, and for the first time Jace saw what he had been missing. The stone was never the real problem. Carrying it alone was. Jace stood at the edge of the river, watching the builders move as one, their steps uneven but connected, their efforts scattered but shared. The stones were still heavy, and the strain was clear on every face, yet something invisible held them together. He stepped closer. An older man near the front straightened his back and wiped his hands slowly, as if he had done this 1,000 times. His hair was gray, his movements calm, and his breathing steady in a way that did not fight the weight, but worked with it. Jace hesitated, then spoke. "How do you keep going?" "When it hurts." The old man looked at him for a moment, then lowered his eyes to the stone in Jace's hands before turning slightly and placing his own hands under a nearby slab. "Lift with me." Jace did not think. He stepped forward, crouched, and gripped the rough edge of the stone. As he lifted, the weight rushed into his arms immediately, heavy and familiar, pressing into his shoulders like it always did. But this time, it did not pull him down alone. They moved together, step by step, their feet pressing into the dirt with a shared rhythm that Jace could feel through his body. His arms still burned. His breath still grew heavy. The pain did not disappear, but it did not control him. After a few steps, the old man spoke, his voice calm and steady, almost blending into the movement itself. "When you walk alone, your mind tells you to stop." They took another step. "But when you carry the weight together, the eyes of your brothers keep you moving." Jace felt the words settle inside him as the familiar moment returned. His arms began to shake, and his grip weakened just enough for him to notice the same pressure, the same signal. The same quiet invitation to stop. The voice returned. "You're tired." His step slowed. "You can stop now." The stone pressed deeper into his shoulder, and his fingers loosened slightly as his body leaned forward, preparing to escape the weight, just like before. This was the moment. The same moment. But something interrupted it. The man beside him adjusted his hold just enough to steady the stone. Another worker took a deeper breath, slow and controlled, and Jace felt the rhythm of it without looking. They were still holding, still moving. Jace turned his head slightly, his eyes catching theirs for just a second. Their faces were tight with effort, their arms trembling just like his. No one looked strong, but no one was letting go. The shame of letting a friend down is 1,000 times stronger than the willpower of one man. Jace inhaled deeply, his chest expanding as if he was pulling strength from the people around him. His grip tightened again, not out of pride, but because letting go now would not only be his choice, it would affect them. One step, then another. The voice in his head did not disappear, but it lost its power, drowned out by something stronger, something real. Connection. The stone was still heavy, but Jace was no longer carrying it alone. And for the first time, he did not want to let go. The sun had risen high above the river, and the light now fell fully across the bridge, revealing the slow shape of something being built, one stone at a time. Jace stood among the others, his chest rising and falling, his arms still shaking slightly from the weight he had just carried. But he was still standing. He lowered the stone together with the group, placing it carefully into position, and as the dust lifted into the warm air, he took a small step back and looked at what they had made. It was not finished, but it was real. Jace looked at his hands, then at the people beside him, and for the first time, he understood something he had never felt in the forest. Strength was not something you protected. It was something you shared. He turned as another group prepared to lift, and without hesitation, he stepped forward and took his place beside them. No words, no performance, just presence. My friend, this story is about you. Maybe your stone is not made of rock. Maybe it is a goal you keep hidden, something you protect because you are afraid to be seen failing. And every time it becomes heavy, you tell yourself you will come back tomorrow because no one is there to notice if you stop. But you do notice, and slowly, that becomes your pattern. That day, Jace did not learn a technique. He learned 3 simple truths. First, what you hide becomes easy to abandon. When your goal lives only in your mind, it can change shape whenever it becomes uncomfortable. But when you share it, even with one person, it becomes something you must face. Second, you do not need a crowd. You need one person who shows up, someone who carries their weight beside you. When your strength fades, their presence becomes your reminder to continue. Third, change one word. Not I, but we. Because when the effort is shared, the decision to stop is no longer yours alone. Jace did not become the strongest man that day, but he stopped becoming the man who quits, and that changed his path. So when your moment comes, when the weight feels too heavy and the voice in your head tells you to stop, do not disappear into silence. Stay. Stay 1 second longer. Stay 1 step further. And if someone is beside you, holding on, then hold on too. Because strength is not built in silence. It is built together. And if you choose not to walk alone anymore, then you are already closer than you think.